I rise in the House today in order to present Bill 141, the Home Fire Sprinklers Act 2004 for second reading. Mr. Speaker, this week marks Home Fire Safety Week, and it is a time when Canadians are asked to reflect on how best to protect their homes from fire. The purpose of the bill is to prevent the devastating loss of life and property that is caused by fire every year. This bill will require the installation of fire sprinklers in new detached, semi-detached, and row houses. Between 1999 and 2003 in Ontario, fire took the lives of 533 people and was responsible for almost $1.6 billion in property damage. Last year alone, fire claimed the lives of 110 people and destroyed an estimated $457 million in property. However, none of these figures adequately represent the human cost endured by families and friends whose loved ones are lost or injured due to fire. This bill is the culmination of over a decade of work by a dedicated firefighter. His mission? To bring proven technology of residential fire sprinklers to the Canadian public. Brian Maltby is the Fire Prevention Division Chief in the City of Brampton, and he's the first Canadian ever to be elected to the Board of Directors of the Fire Life Safety Section of the International Association of Fire Chiefs. There is compelling statistical evidence of the need and effectiveness of residential fire sprinklers. Residential sprinklers add fire suppression and complement the early warning capability of smoke alarms. When a fire starts, a heat-sensitive element called a fusible link detects the heat. Each sprinkler head responds independently, resulting in fires rarely spreading beyond the room of origin. In roughly 95% of all documented sprinkler activations, one sprinkler has been sufficient to control the fire. At first, I didn't understand why Brian was so driven until he told me the reason why the issue of residential sprinklers had become so personal. In 1993, Brian Maltby had the unenviable task of having to tell a young mother that her 2 children had perished in a fire. In vain, he tried to comfort the distraught young woman. And for months after that tragedy, Brian would lie awake at night thinking about that young mother and her loss, and about how those 2 young lives were prematurely lost. The construction of a new monument for the Ontario Professional Firefighters Association just south of the legislature will be completed next month. It's a beautiful structure and recognizes the ultimate contribution of many brave firefighters. However, I believe that the best way to honor those fallen heroes is by ensuring that we minimize the risk for current and future firefighters. In September of 2000, Brampton firefighters responded to a residential fire. Upon arrival, the crew found the house fully engulfed. Fortunately, all of the residents were out. Larry Brooks, a 19-year career firefighter, stretched an attack hose line around the east side of the house when suddenly the roof, east wall, and block chimney collapsed, trapping Larry in the rubble. The crew worked feverishly to pull Larry out from underneath the debris, and for a while it was uncertain whether firefighter Brooks would survive his injuries. This summer, after 4 years of trying to save Larry's left arm, the doctors finally had to amputate it. Today, dozens of firefighters and others affected by fire have come from all over the province to express their support for the installation of residential fire sprinklers in new homes. In the members' gallery, we have a tireless advocate for the residential fire sprinklers, firefighter Brian Maltby. We have Al Speed, the former fire chief of the City of Toronto, and William Stewart, current fire chief of the City of Toronto. We have Deputy Fire Chief Terry Boyko of the Ontario Association of Fire Chiefs. Deputy Fire Marshal Doug Crawford. And firefighter Chris Arthy, whose home was destroyed in a fire and installed home fire sprinklers when rebuilding his home. Thank you. Sometimes it's easy to become desensitized to the weekly reports about the number of fire deaths or injuries or the extraordinary damage that occurs in this province every year, but it's impossible to ignore the stories of people who have been affected by fires. Individuals like Mr. Gemfy. In 1999, Mr. Gemfy lost his daughter in an arson house fire in Brampton. Despite of the fact that his loss is still relatively recent, he has chosen to come here today in order to show his support for residential fire sprinklers. Mr. Gyamfi joins us in the members' gallery. Thank you. The question before us today is how much value do we attribute to the lives of our firefighters, the lives of Ontarians, and on the lives of our families? I believe that we as legislators have a responsibility to ensure we take a leadership role to protect Ontarians. Fire sprinklers in new homes are affordable. On average, the home fire sprinklers only add 1 to 1.5% to the total building cost in new construction. We need to encourage the same consumers who demand airbags in their cars and who spend several $1,000s to protect their homes with electronic alarm systems to demand homes with sprinklers. The cost is insignificant when compared to the possibility of losing a loved one in a fire. Just over 2 weeks ago, Ontario endured one of this year's most tragic fire incidents in West Lincoln, Ontario. On November 8, 2004, a 39-year-old expectant mother named Monica Whirland died from smoke inhalation with her 7 children. By the time a fire truck was able to arrive on the scene, their home was already engulfed in flames. I'm sure that I express the sentiments of this legislature when I offer our sincere condolences to Mr. Whirland, his family, and the constituents of the member from Erie-Lincoln. Some would propose that homes in rural areas do not need fire sprinklers. However, homes that are located in remote or isolated areas are less likely to have a quick response time from emergency services, and they're the ones that most need fire sprinklers. It's important to understand that in most fires, it's the smoke that kills, not the fire. As well, most residential fires occur when people feel the safest, sleep in their beds, usually between the hours of midnight and 6 a.m. The vast majority of all residential fires today are due to behavioral causes: careless smoking, unattended cooking, or children playing with fire. While we cannot prevent these behaviors, we can design sprinkler systems to control the outcome. By the time an individual realizes that their home is on fire, it's often too late to find a safe exit in the home. The smoke is blinding. You're choking. You're disoriented. Imagine the terror that faces you, the prospect of blindly trying to find a safe exit out of your home and ensuring that everyone else you love is safe. There's now a significant body of evidence in California, Georgia, Maryland, Arizona, Washington, and in Vancouver. There's never been a single fire fatality in a residence with a sprinkler system where the occupants have not been in direct contact with the fire. It is time for Ontario to take a leadership role and become the first province in Canada to mandate fire sprinklers. When I first came to Queen's Park, I remember something Premier McGuinty said to members when speaking about private members' legislation. He asked us to be courageous and to bring legislation to the table that was meaningful. I took his words to heart. I cannot think of anything more important than showing our commitment to civilian and firefighter safety. Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, I'd like to offer my sincere gratitude and appreciation to my friend, firefighter Brian Maltby. I know Brian has a dream of a day when firefighters will respond to a house fire by running into a house, turning off the water, mopping up the floor, and returning safe and sound. A wise man once said that the best time to plant a tree was 25 years ago. The second best time is today. The best time to include residential sprinklers in the building code would have been 25 years ago. The second best time to install residential sprinklers is today. Please join me in supporting this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.